Welcome, everyone, to Buddha Center. My name's Jeff Allen, and once again, here we are tonight. We've made it here. So fortunate to be able to hear the holy words of Lama Tsongkhapa and the source of all my good once again, and look at it through the eyes of a lot of different commentaries and using Pabonka Rinpoche's outline. It feels so great to have some little tiny bit of a clue what these stanzas mean and how to unpack them. So we're going to try to do some unpacking tonight, and we're bridging into the great scope, the teachings for beings of great capacity. And what Rinpoche was so kind to show us over and over and over again, that compassion's great, bodhicitta is great, but if you don't have that foundation that's related to yourself, and you don't know what you suffer from, how could you ever develop compassion for every single sentient being who's in the same state that you're in if you don't first identify the problem within yourself? And I'm so happy that Rinpoche, just year after year, those teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity were just right at the forefront with the small scope and the teachings on the precious human rebirth and death and impermanence and etc. And then the Four Noble Truths in the medium scope. And Rinpoche just pounded that information into our minds in such a way that it made us really, in a contrived way, or if you're a bodhisattva and have bodhicitta, in a non-contrived way, be able to kind of get how, my suffering and your suffering is pretty bad. And if I want to not only be free of my suffering, but be able to achieve this bliss that the Buddha has, I'm going to need to rely upon you and put you somehow before myself in order to fully ripen into that Buddha with the 32 major marks and the 80 minor marks, and in order to fully remove the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, or the cognitive obscurations. So without that foundation of the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, we can talk about getting bodhicitta or dream about being a bodhisattva, but if we don't have that foundation that makes us disgusted with the 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, and 3 sufferings, then how could we ever develop enough of an idea that you too need to be helped in some way or another? Because I might see you have some more money than I do, or you have some more things around you that seem that, wow, from samsara perspective, you're doing pretty well. You seem pretty grounded. You seem pretty happy. And until we realize the common plight, it's difficult to really develop compassion, wanting sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes. Well, what is that? What is suffering and its causes? What is that? That's the medium scope. What is suffering? 8 suffering, 6 suffering, 3 suffering. What is the origin of suffering, etc. So before we go further, let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture and try and get our minds into a more reasonable place to be able to develop a good motivation, develop virtue, and achieve the wisdom arisen from hearing, and then we'll be able to have the wisdom arisen from analysis, and then wisdom arisen from meditation. And it all starts with being able to be calm enough to hear and receptive, a good receptacle for the teachings. And if we are consumed by a mind that's scattered and a mind that's running towards things we want and running away from things that we don't want, and we have this mental activity that's just reinforcing those kind of ideas, then if we come to the teaching with that kind of idea, we're not really going to hear it well, because it's going through a filter of all of this mess in our minds that we're normally playing with, or normally, almost like an obsession or addicted to. So let's try to get our minds to a place that's nice and calm, a place where we can hear things. We don't have the faults of the three pots, where we realize that we're ill. We have the illness of the afflictions. We're bound by ignorance. We're asleep. And when we wake up from the sleep of ignorance, we will no longer be ill. And recognize that the teacher is like a doctor and the Dharma is like medicine, and taking the medicine is how we actually get cured. And that the Buddhas are so amazing and made this teaching remain in this world. So that's the place from which we can really start and be realistic about. We are ill. This is medicine that we're hearing. We don't want to misunderstand the doctor and go to the pharmacy and take the wrong medicine because it won't cure the illness of the grasping at the I and phenomena as being truly established, which is the true thing that we need to renounce in terms of the origin of suffering. We saw with Khensur Geshe Wangdak that he so clearly understood that. He had that desire to definitely emerge day and night that Lama Tsongkhapa talks about. And what he knew he needed to emerge from was the grasping at the I and phenomena as being truly established, that then gives rise to that self-cherishing attitude, which keeps us from being Buddhas. So let's get into the 7-point Vairakana posture and calm down a little bit. And we'll do the same thing we always do. Anyone who's not familiar on any of the other applications with the 7-point Vairakana posture, I've taught it so many times, and you can read about it in so many places. Just try to make sure that your back, if you don't know anything about it, just try to make sure that your back at least is straight. A very important part of the instruction. And don't close your eyes and don't keep them open all the way. Keep them slightly slit, looking down kind of at your nose. So real quickly, a 7-point Vairakana posture. Put your legs into the cross-legged fashion, preferably the lotus posture. Right hand on the left, thumbs touching comfortably in your lap. Back straight, spine like a stack of coins. Shoulders in a comfortable position, just kind of allowing for your arms to bow out like the great master Lotsawa Marpa. The teacher of Milarepa. You see in the picture, he has this very beautiful meditation posture. So you have your shoulders in that comfortable position, your head slightly tilted downward, eyes slightly open at the tip of pointed at the tip of your nose, slightly open so that you don't have so much conceptuality and looking around. Not slightly open, not open all the way, because then you have too much conceptuality and you see too many things that are a distraction. But if you close them all the way, it reminds us of sleeping. And meditation isn't about just getting to a dulled out, sleepy place, mellow. You will be mellow, but the point of it is to be mellow clear. So it's about calming down enough, but being clear like a laser at the same time. And in the eye's position, helps to kind of get us to that place. And as at first, it'd be a little distraction because you see things out of that slit. But if you don't start in that way and get familiarized with meditating in that way, it can lead to a lot of dullness, or if you have your eyes wide open, excitement in the future that will be hard to combat because you'll have habituated yourself with a way of meditating that makes you hit a wall and you get really used to it and comfortable with it. So we'll keep our eyes in that slit position. And we'll have our mouths in a comfortable position with our tongue on the roof of our mouth, kind of tongue against the top teeth, allowing for the saliva to circulate. And we're going to breathe through our nose, which will make it so our mouths don't dry out. And eventually we're going to want to be able to meditate for 4 hours or for 4 days straight, if you're a great yogi. And you'll only be able to do that if you have that supporting body posture that doesn't become a distraction. So let's get into that posture and begin breathing in and out through your nose. Breathing in, bring the breath all the way to the top of the breath, filling the lungs and the diaphragm, and then gently turning it around and exhaling and counting 1. So we're going to make the focal object, the breathing in and out, and the counting, and then we're going to add the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni at about an arm length away, about the size of your thumb, about eye height, beautiful and radiant, but in a static form. You want to make sure that when you're doing single pointed meditation, that your object of observation isn't moving or isn't shooting off light rays or something, unless it's just static like that. Any kind of movement can become a distraction, and you want the focal object to just be held so tightly. So we have four things now. We're breathing in, breathing out, counting, and the front generation aspect of Buddha Shakyamuni, or whatever meditational deity you normally do. This is just a suggestion. Or if you just want to count the breath, fine too. You don't have to add the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. Anybody, Buddhist, non-Buddhist, would benefit from, being able to calm one's mind down. I mean, if you could get shamatha as a Buddhist or a non-Buddhist, if you could get your mind to a point where you could, focus on something so well that that object you're focusing on wouldn't move, and you wouldn't lose concentration. Just imagine what that could do just in your daily life without applying it to Buddhism. If you could be more focused, if you could, read something and be able to just read the paragraph once and almost have memorized it in a sense, because you're so able to concentrate and focus on only one thing. So let's practice that a little bit, and then we'll go from there and see what happens. We're so blessed to be among the very few sentient beings who know who Buddha Shakyamuni is. That holy being that turned the wheel of Dharma for all of us to be able to be free from our suffering and achieve bliss. A being who's eradicated all negative qualities and only has excellent qualities. A being who's removed the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, that allows him or her, in this case him, but so many Buddhas are female as well, to be able to have perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, perfect love, perfect skillful means, perfect power, the ability to be so reliable and help people in the way that they truly need to be helped. At this point, we're so handicapped in that area. We don't really know what sentient beings need. We can try, but it's really only the Buddha that's the reliable guide in the universe. We will become that Buddha. We will wake up from the sleep of ignorance, just like Buddha Shakyamuni did. We will remove the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, and become a fully enlightened Buddha, just like Buddha Shakyamuni. We have Buddha nature. Our minds can mature into that state of purity. The defilements that are currently in our mind can be removed. Those adventitious stains, those added stains that aren't of the nature of our mind. The nature of our mind is the same nature as Buddha Shakyamuni's mind in terms of the emptiness of inherent existence. We're so fortunate that we have a mental consciousness that can mature. The same kind of mental consciousness that Buddha Shakyamuni matured. We're so fortunate to be presented with the stages of the path that are necessary for us to engage in order to have the same thing happen that Buddha Shakyamuni happened through the process of practice, through ripening paths and liberating paths, through accumulating merit, purifying our misdeeds, generating renunciation and bodhicitta. We have ripening paths, and by seeing emptiness directly according to the middle way consequence view, we will have that liberating path that will allow us to cut the root of cyclic existence. And when we have renunciation and bodhicitta that are combined with that wisdom realizing emptiness, we will have the same pathways in our mind that lead to the state of complete Buddhahood that Buddha Shakyamuni did. Rejoice in your potential. Now, the static image of Buddha Shakyamuni is no longer static. Imagine that a firework type of explosion takes place from Buddha Shakyamuni, and the entire merit field is now in the space in front of you. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is there, so happy that we've actually come to this class because we know that the only answer to all of our problems is to remove the origin of suffering. And Buddha Shakyamuni is so kind to show us how to do that. And Buddha Shakyamuni is so happy that we're engaging in that which will cause us to have fearlessness and infinite happiness. Imagine all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Imagine Khensur Geshe Wangdak smiling right there, so happy. His Holiness the Dalai Lama smiling right there, so happy. We know that beings like Khensur Geshe Wangdak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama love us so much, care about us so much, and only want what's best for us. And what's best for us is to engage in the stages of the path to enlightenment. And tonight, we're trying to have the wisdom arisen from hearing so we have something to analyze when we sit down on the meditation cushion so that we can discover what is correct and then meditate on it. We're so fortunate imagining those holy beings like Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Demalocha Rinpoche, and imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu and Umzala Geshe Aga and Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin and Ani Tupten Chodron. We're so fortunate to have beings who have dedicated their lives to the path, and Jeffrey Hopkins and Lama Allen Wallace. Imagining these beings in the space in front of us. We're so fortunate. Imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha. We're so fortunate to have been blessed by these beings that we actually have heard all of their names in the great texts that we read and Khensur Geshe Wangdak taught us. Imagine those beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Baba Vega and Chandarashita. Imagining them all in the space in front of us in Kamala Shila. Imagining Lama Salimpa and Lama Atisha and Dron Tompa and the three Kadampa lineage masters. Imagining the lineage of blessings, the practice lineage passed down from Lord Vajradhara to beings like Sharawa, Matripa, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, all these holy, holy beings imagining in the space in front of you. Those beings of the Nyingma Kagyu Sakya and Galup order in Tibetan Buddhism. Those holy beings like Padmasambhava and Sakya Pandita and the Karmapas and Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtubje and Jelsubje and Jayan Sheba and Basu Chuji Jetson, Jayan Ripi Dorje, Janja Ripi Dorje, Goncha Jimmy Wampo. All these beings we're so connected to. Imagining the beings of the highest Yoga Tantra, Yogic Tantra, Action Tantra, Performance Tantra, and Action Tantra. The 35 Buddhas, the protector deities of the small scope, medium scope, and great scope. Imagining Paul Dalai Lama, all these beings we're so connected to in the space in front of us. We're so fortunate. So fortunate to have beings who are so dedicated to teaching like Geshe Dorje Damdu and Khensur Geshe Wangdak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Umzala Geshe Aga is so kind to us. We know that in order to remove our suffering, we have to engage in these stages of the path. And in order to have complete happiness, the most 100% happiness, we have to put other sentient beings' needs before our own. We aren't bodhisattvas yet, but we will become bodhisattvas by relying upon the same exact pathways that His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Khensur Geshe Wangdak, Umzala Geshe Aga, and Geshe Dorje Damdu, and Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, all of these holy beings rely on the same exact pathways. And they tell us so clearly that we have to care for sentient beings. We have to love sentient beings. We have to have compassion for sentient beings. So now, knowing that, imagine that you have infinite hands and you grab all sentient beings and you bring them here. Imagine you bring all the beings in the hell realms, the 8 hot hells, the 8 cold hells, the surrounding hells. Just tortured those beings. They have so much suffering. Imagine that just for a moment they have just a state of rest. They're cooled off or they're warmed up, or the pain of all of the horrifying things we read about just stops for a moment, because we've brought them here to hear the only thing that will allow them to never have to experience those kinds of suffering again. It's the only thing. Imagine we bring all of the hungry ghosts here. We read about their suffering, and it's so immense, so much craving, thirst and hunger, and not being able to be satiated ever. Living for 1,000,000 years in that way. The only thing that's different between us and them is that we haven't been born into the hungry ghost realm. We're humans. But all it takes is just a shift in our situation, death, and a shift in our situation, in the wrong mental state at death. And we can be reborn into those torturous states. So we think about those sentient beings and we bring them all here. We aren't tortured right now in that same way. And imagine that just for a moment we hit the pause button on their torture. Imagine bringing all the animals here. We can see these animals with our eyes, and we can see how much suffering they undergo. The suffering of having to be servants, being slaughtered, always worrying about being eaten by something larger. They think they're in such a good state. Oh, this farmer's taking such good care of me. He loves me so much, and then leads them to slaughter by the nose. These sentient beings that have this state of suffering that we see so clearly in front of our eyes. Imagine being at the bottom of the ocean, so dark, not knowing anything but just fear. So many obstacles, so much ignorance, so much inability to understand anything except craving, trying to find somewhere to sleep, trying to find something to eat, and make sure you're not eaten. Think about that. Think about what it would be like to be that being right now and grab all of them and put the pause button on it, on that suffering, just for a moment. Imagine that it's happened, that they have their ears open, that they have the same kind of beautiful motivation that you have. Now imagine you bring all human beings here, leaving out none, recognizing that in order to become a Buddha, you have to be non-biased. You have to be able to have as the object of observation of your love and compassion every being in the universe, every human being, no matter what. We have to change our attitudes towards others. We have to see them all as equally lovable. And if we really, really love them all, we would bring them here. Now imagine you bring all the demigods here. Those beings that are so jealous because they just want to be a little bit higher and have some of the good things that the gods have. We know what that's like. Imagine that jealousy and that desire to fight is just stopped for the moment. And they're here. Imagine that the desire realm gods who are so attached to sensual pleasures realize for just a moment these sensual pleasures will end, and I'll be thrust by my ignorance, contaminated karmas, the afflictions and their seeds, into a place where there aren't sensual pleasures. They get a glimpse for one moment of what a hell being has to endure, and let them recognize that they will one day have all of their flowers wilt and begin to stink and be reborn into those lower realms. It takes so much immense karma to have samsaric happiness that the fall is so hard and so great. And those gods, when it starts to happen, see that it's going to occur. And the amount of suffering is greater, they say, than the suffering in the lower realms at that moment for them. Bring them all here. The beings in the form realm and the formless realms that are so addicted to their meditation, so addicted to their inner calmness, that they don't see they're not liberated. They feel like they're liberated, but they're still stuck in samsara and have pervasive compounded suffering. Even if they're in the peak of cyclic existence, they have pervasive compounded suffering, and some of them even have the suffering of change. Imagine you bring them all here to be able to hear the holy words that we're going to talk about tonight. That aren't words that are made up by me. These are words that were given to me like a transmission from a holy lineage, presented to me from Khensur Geshe Wangdak, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and now Geshe Dorje Damdu, and Umzala Geshe Aga, and other great beings. Now that we're all here, let's read from Lama Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim Chenmo. Okay. A summary of the stage of the path to enlightenment, an excerpt from the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, this volume 3. Now I will give a brief summation of the general meaning of the path. At the outset, the root of the path derives from your reliance upon a teacher, so consider this seriously. Then, once you have developed an uncontrived desire to take advantage of your leisure, this desire will spur you to practice continually. Therefore, in order to develop this, meditate on the topics connected with leisure and opportunity. Unless you then stop the various sentiments which seek the aims of, this life, you will not diligently seek the aims of future lives. So work at meditating on how the body you have is impermanent in the sense that it will not last for long, and on how after death you will wander into miserable realms. At that time, by creating a genuine awareness which is mindful of the horrors of the miserable realms, build certainty from the depths of your heart about the qualities of the 3 refuges. Be constant in the common vow of going for refuge and train in its precepts. Then, from a range of perspectives, develop faith in the sense of conviction in karma and its effects. This being the great foundation of all positive qualities, make this faith firm. Strive to cultivate the 10 virtues and turn away from the 10 non-virtues, and always stay within the path of the 4 powers. When you have thus trained well in the teachings associated with a person of small capacity and have made this practice firm, you should contemplate often the general and specific faults of cyclic existence, and in general, turn your mind away from cyclic existence as much as you can. Then, having identified the nature of karma and the afflictions, the causes from which cyclic existence arises, create an authentic desire to eliminate them. Develop broad certainty about the path that liberates you from cyclic existence, the 3 highest higher trainings, and particularly make effort at whichever of the vows of individual liberation you have taken. When you have thus trained well in the teachings associated with a person of medium capacity and have made this practice firm, consider the fact that you, as yourself, have fallen into the ocean of cyclic existence. So have all your beings, all beings, your mothers. Train in the spirit of enlightenment, which is rooted in love and compassion, and strive to develop this as much as you can. Without it, the practice of the 6 perfections and the 2 stages are like stories built on a house with no foundation. When you develop a little experience of the spirit of enlightenment, confirm it with the right. By making effort in this training, make the aspiration as solid as you can. Then study the great waves of the Bodhisattva deeds, learning the boundaries of what to discard and what to adopt, and make a strong wish to train in the Bodhisattva deeds. After you have developed these attitudes, take the vow of the engaged spirit of enlightenment through its right. Train in the 6 perfections that mature your own mind, and the 4 ways of gathering disciples, which mature the minds of others. In particular, risk your life in making a great effort to avoid root infractions. Strive not to be tainted by the small and intermediate contaminants and faults, and even if you are tainted, work to repair it. Then, because you must train specifically in the final 2 perfections, become knowledgeable in the way to sustain meditative stabilization and then achieve concentration. As much as you can, develop the view of the 2 selflessnesses, a purity free from permanence and annihilation. After you have found the view and stabilized your mind upon it, understand the proper way to sustain the view in meditation, and then do so. Such stabilization and wisdom are called serenity and insight, but they are not something separate from the last 2 perfections. Therefore, after you have taken the Bodhisattva vows, they come about in the context of training in its precepts. You have reached a critical point when, while meditating on the lower levels, you increasingly wish to attain the higher levels, and when studying the higher levels, your wish to practice the lower levels becomes stronger and stronger. Some say to expend your energy only to stabilize your mind and to understand the view, ignoring all earlier topics, but this makes it very difficult to get the vital points. Therefore, you must develop certainty about the whole course of the path. When you meditate on these topics, train your understanding and then go back to balance your mind. So, if it seems that your faith in the teacher who instructs you on the path is decreasing, since this will cut the root of everything good that has come together, work on the methods for relying on the teacher. Similarly, if your joy in your practice loses strength, make meditations on the topics connected with leisure and opportunity your primary focus. If your attachment to this life increases, make meditation on impermanence and the faults of the miserable realms your primary focus. If you seem to be lazy about the prescriptions you have accepted, consider that your certainty about karma, cause, and effect is meager, and make meditation on karma and its effects your primary focus. If your sense of disenchantment with all of cyclic existence decreases, your desire to seek liberation will become just words. Therefore, contemplate the faults of cyclic existence. If your intention to benefit living beings in whatever you do is not strong, then you will sever the root of the Mahayana. Therefore, frequently cultivate the aspirational spirit of enlightenment together with its causes. Once you have taken the vows of a conqueror's child and are training in the practices, if the bondage of the reifying conception of signs seems strong, use reasoning consciousness to destroy all objects which are apprehended by the mind which conceives of signs, and train your mind in a space-like and illusion-like emptiness. If your mind is enslaved to distraction and does not remain on a virtuous object, you should primarily sustain one-pointed stability. As former teachers have said, from these illustrations you should understand the cases I have not explained. In brief, without being partial, you have to be able to use the whole spectrum of virtues. Among the stages of the path of a person of great capacity, I have explained how one who trains in the Bodhisattva path practices insight, which is wisdom. After you have trained in this ways, in the paths common to both sutra and mantra, you must undoubtedly enter the mantra path because it is very much more precious than any other practice, and it quickly brings the two collections to completion. If you are to enter it, then as Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment says, you must first please the Guru, even to a greater extent than explained earlier. With deeds such as respect and service, and with practice that is in accordance with the Guru's words, you must do this for a Guru who meets at least the minimum qualifications of a teacher explained there. Then at the outset, your mind should be matured through the ripening initiation as explained in a source tantra. You should then listen to the pledges and the vows to be taken, understand them and maintain them. If you are stricken by rude infractions, you may make these commitments again. However, this greatly delays the development of the good qualities of the path in your mind. Make a fierce effort not to be tainted by these root infractions. Strive not to be tainted by the gross infractions. But in the event that you are tainted, use the methods for restoring your vows. Since these are the basis of practice of the path, without them you will become like a dilapidated house whose foundation has collapsed. Manjushri Mula Tantra says the master of the sages does not say that faulty ethical discipline achieves the tantric path, meaning that those with faulty ethical discipline have none of the great intermediate or low attainments. And it says in the highest yoga tantra texts that those who do not maintain their vows, those who have inferior initiation, and those who do not understand reality do not achieve anything despite their practice. Therefore, someone who talks about practicing the path without maintaining the pledges and the vows has completely strayed from the tantric path. In order to cultivate the mantra path, someone who keeps the pledges and vows should, at the outset, meditate on the stage of generation, the complete divine wheel as explained from a source tantra. The unique object to be eliminated on the tantric path is the conception of ordinariness, which regards the aggregates, constituents, and sensory sources as common. It is the stage of generation itself that eliminates this and transforms the abodes, bodies, and resources so that they appear as special. The conquerors and their children continually bless the person who clears away the conception of ordinariness in this way. Such a person easily brings to completion the limitless collections of merit, thereby becoming a suitable vessel for the stage of completion. This person should then meditate on what appears in the source tantras on the stage of completion. Neither the tantras nor the scholars who explain their intended meanings hold that you should discard the first stage and merely classify it within the later stage, training only in individual portions of the path. Therefore, you must bear in mind the vital points of the two stages of the complete corpus of the path of highest yoga tantra. Considering only the terms I have described a mere fraction of what is involved in entering the mantra path. Therefore, understand this in detail by using works on the stages of the mantra path. If you train in this way, you will train in the entirely complete corpus of the path, which includes all the vital points of sutra and mantra. As a result, your attainment of leisure in this lifetime will have been worthwhile, and you will be able to extend the conqueror's precious teaching within both yours, your own, and others' minds. So holy, such a blessed set of instructions Lama Tsongkhapa gives us. I feel so fortunate that Geshe Dorje Damdu starts every single class with the aspiring bodhicitta vows. And then we see in here that it says to take them again and again. You see that these great masters aren't making it up. They're taking what they do from these texts that we can take the meaning from. It's not a secret book no one has. It's right here. So incredible. If your intention to benefit living beings in whatever you do is not strong, then you'll sever the root of the Mahayana. Therefore, frequently cultivate the aspirational spirit of enlightenment together with its causes. Frequently cultivate it. These teachers are so kind to us. And we see that right in the refuge prayer. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the practice of giving and so forth, I have like 3 of these translations in my head. Through the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, for the sake of all sentient beings. May I practice those 6 perfections to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, with the foundation of refuge. I'm going for refuge to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And sometimes that refuge prayer that we recite, I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, is said to be Atisha's refuge prayer. We're so blessed. Understand there are persons of 3 capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics. Rinpoche told us that so much. Now we'll recite the Heart Sutra. Let's do some, we have the imprint and the transmission of this in Tibetan, so let's recite it in Tibetan. I'll recite it in Tibetan and think about the implicit meaning of the emptiness, about the explicit meaning, of that is the emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena. So profound, so difficult to realize. So difficult to realize, but we can, because we have these pure sources to understand it. And think about those 5 paths. The Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha, that path of accumulation, that path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And that Om that sits there right at the front, that we can imagine is the pure body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. That is our body, speech, and mind that can transform through Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate, through Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. And we can achieve that same pure body, speech, and mind that the Buddha has by relying on those pathways. Okay, so the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Papa Shereji Barodi Shimi Nimbo Shuzo Jakagedo Bhagavate Prajaparamita Randeya Pukedo Jomden Nama Shereji Barodi Shimi Nimbo Digi Dagi Duba Dujina Jomden De Jabi Jago Bombi Riga Lungi Gendun Jembo Dan Janju Zembi Gendun Jembo Dan Daji Juju Zedi Itze Jomden De Zamon Nawan Jejabu Juji Nanandi Tingin Zila Nyomba Jozo Yande Itze Janju Zemba Zemba Jembo Baba Genrezi Wanju Shereji Barodi Shimba Zamo Chuba Nila Namba Danjin Bumonga Bodita Lion Ranjin Je Doma Nabo Dao Dene Zanji Jitu Zedan Demba Sharibu Janju Zemba Zemba Jembo Baba Genrezi Wanju La De Gije Mezo Rijibon Galala Jereji Baro de Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba de La Lava Jade Gichi Meba Dan Janju Zemba Zemba Jembo Baba Genrezi Wanju Gitzi Dan Demba Share Dadi Ibula de Gichi Mezo Sharibu Rijibon Rijibon Galala Jereji Baro de Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba de Da Naba Jaba Jade Bomonga Bodita Jan Ranjin Je Doma Naba Yanda Bajesu Do Zu Domba Domanila Zuzo Domanile Zule Domani Jemayano Domani Lejan Zu Jemayano Dejan Duzo Wadan Duje Dan Nava Jeba Nando Bao Jaribu De Daju Damje Domani De Zeni Meba Majeba Magaba Jima Meba Jima Dandra Jao Meba Jam Meba Jim Meba Gam Meba Jaribu De Dowena Domani La Zume Zome Duje Me Duji name du nama jeba me mime name jeme lume ime zume drame jume rome reja me jume do miki kame bene iji kame iji naba jebi bada yame do mariba zeba me Kashi me kashi sepi bada yame do. Dejan do dunya wadang goju wadang go badang lame. Yeshi me doba me ma doba yame do. Sharibu de do wena shanchu zema nanda ba me biji shere ji baro de shimbala denji ne de zemla jiba me jin drapa me du shinji lo le shinji le deni nyan le de pe ba shinju. Du sun du num ba shabe sanji damji jang shere ji baro de shimbala deni lana me be yanda ba zobi shanchu du bango ba sanji zo de do wena shere ji baro de shimbi nga. Riba jimbi nga lana me be nga me nyaba da nyame nga du nyam jab ju rab ju shewa shebi nga. Mutsambe na denpa sheba sha de shere ji baro de shimbi nga me pate yata on gate gate para sangati bodhi soa. Sharibu shanchu semba semba jembo de da shere ji baro de shimba sama la la ba ja o den de jom den de di ding en zi de le shen de shanchu semba semba jembo baba jen rezi wanshu la le zo she ja wa jin e le zo riji bon de da shen no riji bon de da shen ne je da di du di denpa shen tu shere ji baro de shimba sama la da ba da de de shen che ba nan jan je su ye rang o jom den de di ge tsi ka tsi ne tse dan denpa shara da di ibu dan shanchu semba semba jembo baba jen rezi wanshu dan dam che dan Dembi di bi ko de da da la da mi dan lama yi dan jisa ji bi yi chen yi ran de jom den de ji sumba la nyom ba do do. Gala ju be ni jo dan ba ne ngu she du ju nga yi du do jen du ba ba lama yi bu jin zi ni sun kan dro zo la cha tse lo aga samara ja chandara samara ebe aga samara Aga samara ja shandara samara yame de ada on gati gati para sangati buddhizo baba gonchu sanji kai dembe doji she lobo doji mebo doji shewa doji dragi baji metu beja danji she dingori zo gerin donja jeji shewa dan meton nube jandan drawa dan tomba jomjin bonzon zonjoji daji de jan den da de le jo. Make a mandala offering as a request for teaching, offering the beautiful, perfect universe with perfectly happy beings in that universe as an offering to the teacher that goes back, though, to all of those beings that we thought about. We know that everything we're talking about tonight comes from the extensive deeds lineage, the profound view lineage, the lineage of blessings, and all our holy gurus, the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. This teaching comes from them, not from me. just a dude who received incredible instructions, so now has a shot. Right? The same as we all have, because I have Buddha nature. Because Buddha nature exists. We talked about wrong view, thinking something that exists doesn't. We have to remember Buddha nature exists in all sentient beings. We'll make that mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Chodan Zoji Jonan La Shanju Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Jushe Jibe Sonanji Drola Benje Sanje Drubar Sho Sanje Chodan Zoji Jonan La Shanju Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Jushe Jibe Sonanji Drola Benje Sanje Drubar Sho Sanje Chodan Zoji Jonan La Shanju Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Jushe Jibe Sonanji Drola Benje Sanje Drubar. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, there is no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And from Buddha Shakyamuni's own words, profound, peaceful, elaboration-free, clear light, non-composite, such is the nectar-like Dharma I have discovered. Finding no one to fathom this teachings, in silence I will retire to the woods. So fortunate he didn't stay retired in the woods. Boy, would we be in trouble. Boy, would we have no idea what to do about all of these sufferings that we have and all of this lack of happiness that we constantly seem to be drowning in. You know, even the things that we get we think make us so happy, they suddenly make us drown in suffering sooner or later because it's contaminated happiness. And we're so fortunate that the Buddha 2,600 years ago was so kind to teach to all these different capacities. And then we see beings like Khensur Geshe Wangdak that was so kind to us that he saw our own individual capacities and helped us ripen or mature our Buddha nature because of the understanding that we had to take it step by step. So fortunate to have beings like this in our world. So tonight we're looking again at the source of all my good, Lama Tsongkhapa's, text. That's really just a summary of all of the stages of the path, including the tantric path, which is very, very profound to find that in there. And it's amazing when we look at this very, very brief text, what it contains. Pabonka Rinpoche divides it into the 4 categories. We've gone over this many times, how to find the teacher and, what to do once you've found the teacher, category 1 and 2. So we'll just, without going into any more than that, let's read the source of all my good up to where we are and see. When we were just reading that end kind of summary of the stages of the path, I think Lama Tsongkhapa makes it very clear that this is an integrated path and that you have to practice all of these. You can't leave them out or skip forward. And Lama Tsongkhapa even makes this kind of statement that as you get to the higher paths that are, grounded in these, lower paths, quote unquote, quote, it reinforces and makes your understanding and strength and conviction in these lower paths even more. And that's why we see that, abandoning the wrong view in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, the bodhisattvas don't have renunciation. So how would a bodhisattva have more renunciation than somebody who's in the medium scope? That's just about renunciation. It's what Lama Tsongkhapa is talking about, how your renunciation becomes stronger from your bodhicitta. Very interesting. It says it right in there, how once let's go to it. Let's look at it. Let's not guess. Let's not kind of get it. Let's see if it was in the 200. It's funny, that long pause was me looking up where it was when I had it, a big thing in the book already, marking it off exactly where it is. So, you have reached a critical point when, while meditating on the lower levels, you increasingly wish to attain the higher levels, and when studying the higher levels, your wish to practice the lower levels becomes stronger and stronger. So you see how all of these pathways, even though it's small, medium, and great, it's like a circle that has to keep going. Maybe that's not the best way to put it, but I think you know what I mean when you say that. It's not that now I'm done with this. Now I move. It's not like first I have my white belt, then I get my green belt, then I get my orange belt, then my brown belt, then my black belt. I don't know the belt order, but it's not like that. It's all reinforcing. It's all integrated. This pathway is integrated. So the bodhicitta reinforces your desire to emerge from cyclic existence, because now you're thinking about a whole lot of suffering. You're seeing it, and you're seeing all the diversity and varieties of suffering. And you're recognizing, wow, I could go into the hell realm, because I'm thinking so much about their suffering. It's reinforcing your desire to want to emerge, reinforcing what Lama Tsongkhapa says, that desire to achieve the best for you first. I want the best. I don't want to just have fearlessness. I want to have bliss too. I'm not complete in terms of my own potential if I just rely on the medium scope. And then I say, oh, well, in order to be complete, I need everyone. I need to care for everyone. It's such a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Again, anybody who's new, him or her is fine. Lama Tsongkhapa's teachers were male, but there's many, many realized females. I mean, we look at Ani Thupten Chodron. I mean, she's been a nun for so long and's done so much for the Dharma, and now is growing a monastery that will be really a source of benefit for so many beings, more and more and more. And you see the knowledge when you see the shorts, and you see the breakfast at the Sravasti Abbey shorts, and you see the nuns presenting. So incredible. They're really practicing this. They're not just like, and there's 16 divisions of that, and there's this or that or that. You can feel it when they talk. You can hear it. One of the Anis was talking the other day and said that, I think Geshe Tapke said to meditate on the suffering of the lower realms. And she was out walking in the woods, and they have this stuffed animal owl thing, not like, like a kid's toy. And it's so cute. And, she was walking in the woods, and all of a sudden she saw this owl swoop down and start to eat a mole alive, this little baby mole. And she got it away from it. And then the owl was trying to literally swoop down, wasn't even afraid that there was a human there, to get this, to eat a being alive. And she said, oh man, I think of animals as so cute and cuddly. We have just a cat at the Abbey, she said. And I always just think of him like that. It's really such a nice being, just sits and so cute. But then when I saw this, it made me think of the Geshe's instructions. And I started to think about what it would be like for me to be eaten alive. That's Dharma practice. That's taking everything that happens in your life and converting it into practice, converting it into renunciation, converting it into bodhicitta. Seeing how nice it would be if that mole could have happiness in the causes of happiness and be free from suffering in the causes of suffering. That mole that's being eaten alive, I can be eaten alive. It just takes a shift in my perception, death and shift in perception. That's Dharma practice, where we can start to take what we kind of ordinarily think about and cling to as, oh, this is how it is, and smash it with a hammer. It's not like we aren't just abandoning ordinary appearances because we're now thinking we're deities. Abandoning the ordinary appearance that an owl is cute and cuddly. It eats beings alive. I don't want to be an owl. My cute dog, Rinpoche's puppy. As soon as it can, it runs out to try to eat chipmunks. This dog that sleeps in our bed and sleeps with me so kind and cuddly. I've had to say drop it and seen this, poor chipmunk bleeding and just, convulsing. We have to abandon the way we look at things, because when we become attached to our animals and say, oh, they seem to have a better life than I do, we have to remember they're eating beings alive. They eat feces. They don't know any better. They can't practice Dharma. What will it take for me to become a dog that eats chipmunks? Am I sure at the time of death I'm ready? Have I accumulated enough? Have I purified enough? Have I heard enough Dharma? Is my mind calm enough? Am I attached to this life? And if I'm not, then I'm a spiritual practitioner. But if I'm attached to this life, the moment of death is going to be so scary. I won't be able to, I won't want to leave. It says in the Lam Rim, we see our friends and we see them standing around us, our loved ones, and just looking down on us with such pity. Eyes sunken, mouth drying out, not able to talk. I saw this. I've watched this a couple times now. My grandmother I love so much. I watched this. I watched her die. I watched Khensur Geshe Wangdak pass. Not being able to eat, then not being really able to drink, not being able to talk. Are we ready for that? We're so lucky we can be. We're so lucky we can be. Bless me first to realize the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon. And help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon. Not might, will destroy me soon. We think about infinite lifetimes, beginningless lives. This is such a quick moment in time. Those of us, some of us are, 40s and 50s and 60s and who knows, right? Think about how quickly it all went. I think about it all the time. I can just close my eyes and I can be in science class again, in middle school, dissecting frogs. I don't know why I go to this. It was something that really grossed me out. I didn't like even then. I used to cry at the dinner table about eating meat, so I always, I always had a connection with animals for some reason. And I can smell that, what is it, formaldehyde, something they put the frogs in. I can smell it right now. I don't know how old they are. Could I have been dissecting me? My mother in a previous life? Definitely. Definitely that, according to the Lam Rim. So strange when I think of this. You see dinosaur bones. Was that me? We have to think like this. This is the Lam Rim. We go to museums and we see all of these artifacts. You saw that mummy, the woman with her child. Was that me? That's the Lam Rim. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. I don't want to be a frog in formaldehyde. The lower realms come from non-virtue, very clear in the Lam Rim. Do I engage in enough virtue? Do I abandon enough non-virtue to not be a frog in formaldehyde that is dissected? What have I done in this life? What have I not done in this life? That's what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying. Bless me to recognize this is all real. This isn't a story. As we say, it's not a costume we put on because it's exotic, different, it's Asian, exotic. It's so neat, so colorful, so much gold, so much red, so much yellow, and that little blue. So pretty. Is it about that? Or is it about, are those dinosaur bones mine? What will I be? What will I become? At the moment of death, where will my mind be? What will I thrust myself into? Because no one's thrusting me. It's just my mind. It's just this mind that hasn't realized emptiness. And if I don't realize emptiness, as Shantideva says, if realizing emptiness is the only thing that frees us, liberates us, what else is there to do? If we think about cyclic existence in a real way, and we think about the suffering of suffering, and the suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering, what else is there to do but try to see emptiness? And if we want to see emptiness, we've got to calm our minds down enough to see emptiness. The union of calm abiding and special insight. What else is there to do? Bless me, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, to know this is all true and do something about it from here on. If you weren't doing something about it at 1 minute to 7, from here on. That's what these poems, that's what this works, that's what Lama Tsongkhapa and all these great beings are trying to say to us. Every time we read this, it should saturate our mind in such a way that it becomes how we think and eventually becomes only the way we think. And Lama Tsongkhapa's wisdom is our wisdom. The Buddha's wisdom is our wisdom. Not the same consciousness, separate consciousness, but the same facts can be in my mind that are in Buddha Shakyamuni's mind. Same facts. Not some, all. We can all see, we all will see emptiness. We all will become bodhisattvas. The Buddhas make sure of it. They made a commitment to keep teaching us in whatever way we need until we do, until we see it, emptiness combined with bodhicitta, until we have that ultimate bodhicitta experience. And then from there, get rid of all of the more subtle afflictions and their stains and become Buddhas and remove the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. Amazing. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They're the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teaching. If we can start to meditate on beginningless lives and go to a museum and see a mummy and say, maybe that was me. I'm going to be thrust into another birth, just like I was before, and just like I came into this one. Where was I before? Was I a worm? I have this chance right now. Will I be a worm? Does a worm seem like a worm has a chance in that life? Frozen in the ground. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, every one my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. So clear. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering. We have to know the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. We have to, as Venerable Rabina Corton says, Buddhism isn't about flower petals and wonderfulness and dancing. It's about tasting our own vomit. Tasting that vomit, understanding the impurity, understanding that I'm just a bag of pus and blood and bones and all these, beings I become attached to and find attractive are just pus and blood and bones. And all of these things that I seek out and run after will eventually cause me to suffer so badly, but I think they're the only thing that will make me happy. And the only thing that can make me happy is the Dharma, is the removal of the origin of suffering, and doing so in a way that is in the Mahayana tradition. Then I'll be able to have fearlessness and infinite happiness. So how do we do this? We don't have much more time, but we're going to get into bodhicitta super heavily in the coming weeks. And we're going to do it in a way that feels super heavy. We're going to do it in a way that makes us understand that beings eat each other alive, and I may eat a being alive in the future. Wow, yeah. So we have to know, what is 8 sufferings? Birth, aging, sickness, and death. You have birth, aging, sickness, and death, just like me. Awful. Anybody who's been really sick, we can't, knows. We've seen many of us. I know you have. I know at least some of you have. I'm looking at people who work in hospice. I know you know what that is. I know you know what death is. And then we meet with unpleasant things, separate from pleasant things, don't get what we want, and have the suffering of these aggregates. Mental suffering, physical suffering, such discomfort. We all have this. The 6 types of suffering, the suffering of this rebirth, not being satisfied. So horrible, this dissatisfaction. The uncertainty. Shucking off these bodies. This body I hold so dear, I will shuck off. The body you hold so dear, you will shuck off. Then what? 2 places, high realm, low realms. Beings are, for the most part, involved in the ignoble. Therefore, most ordinary beings go to the lower realms. Only 2 choices, usually low. What's low? 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, surrounding hells, hungry ghosts, and those animals we know so much about. And then, when that time comes, we're all alone when we die. There's people around us, but there's no one who takes that journey with us. When that moment, deet, 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 we know what that is. When that happens, who will go with us? What will we bring? Our virtue, our non-virtue, our realizations, or our lack thereof. That's it. None of those people standing around can go with us. Nor would they want to, if they were really honest. Because they're trying to get another moment of suffering, of change. This is how we have to think about the Dharma. This is what it means to saturate our minds with the Dharma. What is the suffering of suffering? What is the suffering of change? What is the pervasive compounded suffering? I have that. I have the coarse, gross sufferings. I get headaches. I feel sick. I feel bad. My mind gets depressed. All these things happen. I have the suffering of suffering. Broken arm, what that feels like. I've had that happen. Ow, it hurts so badly. States of fever and flu. Detoxification. So much suffering. The suffering of change. All these things that I chase after suddenly become a form of suffering. Whether it's one way or another. Whether I'm just decide I don't like something anymore, or I'm forcefully separated from it. Everything that we experience in samsara, in this realm that we're talking about has that separation. All relationships end in separation. Think about it. Death or I don't like this anymore. I've moved on. And then the pervasive compounded suffering that is that cycle, being forced again and again and again beyond our control into a contaminated set of aggregates by our contaminated karma afflictions and their seeds. No freedom. You didn't pick this all out. It's not like we were pre-birth, like, okay, I want to be named Jeff, and I want to have all these problems, but not those problems. And I made like a little, caricature, and then, brought it to some being and said, okay, this is what I would like. No. There was no one who forced me into any of this except my own mind, my own impure mind. And when I read about the 8, 6, and 3 sufferings, I have to concur. I have to agree. The pervasive compounded suffering is very, very subtle, but I have to agree with all of it. And as you meditate more and more and more, and as you become more and more familiar with this material, it's just inarguable. And if it's inarguable for me, it's inarguable for you. And that's where the compassion comes from. It comes from me recognizing the inarguability, that's a word, of my own suffering. And then I recognize you have that same exact thing. And that's where the compassion starts. That's where the love starts. That's where the kindness really, true kindness starts. His Holiness says that my religion is kindness. Why is his religion kindness? Because he recognizes the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, and the 3 sufferings. That's why his religion is kindness. Without that, you would be so biased. Okay, that's enough. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll go forward with this poem in the future. I just hope that the point of these teachings, there's so many great geshes out there and so many incredible teachers. But I just hope that when we meet like this and when you hear these teachings, something occurs in your mind, because it does in mine when I talk about it. And it only is because of the kindness of Khensur Geshe Wangdak for all of those years. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Geshe Lobsang Gompo, but Khensur Geshe Wangdak, 25 years. Just saying these things, and it just means so much to me now. It's really had such an effect on my mind. And when I talk about it, it affects my mind so much. And I hope that it happens to yours while I'm talking, because that's the whole point of it. That's the whole point, is to try to make it so that we all can move a little forward, and so that if you can move forward more quickly, I will have another reliable guide. It's kind of selfish in a way. Like I'm talking the Dharma, like, okay, well, this is good. I hope I help everyone. But, if this, is a way to for me to get helped. We look at, we rely on sentient beings to develop compassion. We rely on sentient beings to develop patience and to be generous towards. But we also can think about it in another ways. We might be relying on them because they're going to become the only reliable guide, the only kind of reliable guide in the universe. So precious to be able to even have like a spark of that thought come into our minds because we know of Buddha nature. We know all sentient beings will become Buddha, just like us. And the timeline isn't fixed. Like maybe the Buddha knows what time it is, but we just need to practice. We just need to practice and hurry up and practice. But do it like a river where it's not hurried, then nothing, and hurried, then nothing. Then, oh God, Jeff's talking again. 1 or 2 days, I better do something. And this is just nonsense, Like a river, like slowly, like Arya Davis says, that you even have a doubt about emptiness, it tears samsara to shreds, right? So that's the flow, the slow flow. Start with doubt, then kind of get to correct assumption. Move your way on up to inference and so forth. That's what we need to do. All right, let's do some closing prayers. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there is no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Okay. Now we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Again, imagining that you and all sentient beings are doing this as a thank you for the teaching all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni and those holy beings we talk about, the space in front of us that are all so necessary in their own ways for us to be able to ripen and be liberated. So fortunate. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Azandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made in this instruction, I apologize. I confess them now. If I did, I'm not sure if I did. It was out of ignorance if I did. If you heard wrong things because I said them wrong, erase them from your mind, and may the power of Vajrasattva's blessing, who's inseparable from the Lama, Khensur Geshe Wangdak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, etc., Geshe Lobsang Gompo, etc., Geshe Dorje Damdu, Geshe Umzula, Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladran La, etc. May the blessings of Vajrasattva please purify my body, speech, and mind with white light rays and nectar, purifying my body of Om with Oms. Red light rays and nectars purifying my speech with red ahs, and blue light rays and nectars that transform into blue hums and transform my mind. So the white light rays and nectars purifying my body, red light rays and nectars purifying my speech, and blue light rays and nectars purifying my mind. Om Benzasato Samaya Manupalaya Benzasato Sena Pachista Dida Me Baba Sutukaya Me Baba Supokaya Me Baba Anuratu Me Baba Savasidi Me Pracha Savakama Suchame Kitam Shriam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Savatata Benzama Me Muka Benzabava Mahasamaya Safa Ahum Fate. May we all be cared for and protected by Palden Lama, who Rinpoche has said is our protector deity in all of our lives. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Tunja Hong Jo Hong. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Tunja Hong Jo Hong. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Tunja Hong Jo Hong. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Tunja Hong Jo Hong. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Tunja Hong Jo Hong. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Tunja Hong Jo Hong. Jo Rama, Joja Rama, Tunjagala Rachimo Rama, Chadacha Dunjo, Rulo, Hong, Jo, Hong. May Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings please remain in this world until samsara is over. Mime zewe tuchin chenrezi, jeme jembe wombo jambe an, dibbo mali jimzi zawe da, kanchin kepi suchin Tsongkhapa, lozan drabe shala zowa de. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samanta Bhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds in that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains. You are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. May we never in any of our lives be separated from the Guru, from Khensur Geshe Wangdak. May he emanate in whatever form is necessary for us to learn when we're in the ordinary worlds. May, when we become Arya Bodhisattvas, he show us that beautiful enjoyment body that has those 5 specific things that are necessary when we look at where the enjoyment body is and abides and so forth. And when we become Buddhas, may we help Khensur Geshe Wangdak and all the Gurus and Buddhas of Bodhisattvas free each and every sentient being from suffering, the causes of suffering, and bring them to a state where there's freedom from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. May all sentient beings achieve bliss. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. And we'll do this if none of us die between now and Sunday. You never know. We'll do this again. And hopefully we'll all be here. Oh, hey, everybody who's listening, on March 6th is the day of Rinpoche's passing. And at 7 o'clock on that Monday night, we're going to have a program, whatever that means, of some sort. We're going to try to get everybody on Zoom, and we'll recite the Sanchu Mulam in English. It was one of Rinpoche's favorite prayers. A lot of times you would do the Guru Puja, but this is a little shorter, and the words are so beautiful. We'll do it in English together, and then we'll, spend some time without me talking, just talking a little bit about Rinpoche. I'm going to call in all of the folks, all of them. I'm going to see if I get India. I'm going to call everybody and see what we can do. And it time-wise isn't too bad for India. It's like 5:30 a.m. It's 7 p.m. our time, so it's somewhat reasonable. So I'm going to see what we can do, and we'll send email out and so forth. So thank you all for listening so calmly and nicely, and I'll see you next time.